I know our next guest has never seen that footage before. We welcome in Ron Darling, former New York Mets pitcher, author of Game 7, 1986. It's a brand new book, Failure and Triumph in the Biggest Game of My Life. Of course, you see Ron Darling on National Baseball Telecast, where he's a great analyst, and he's also the Mets analyst as well. Good to see you.
Stephen, how you been? It's been a long time.
I was on the plane with you guys to the White House.
That's right.
When you went to see Reagan at the White House.
I mean, Reagan, you were there the whole time for that wonderful
Houston,
ride.
Houston, 86,
That's
Game
right.
6 in Houston, of course, Game 6 in the Shea Stadium, the whole thing.
You know what that does?
What?
Makes us both old.
Yeah, I know. And my son says, "What? You were there? What?" All right, let's get to this.
Okay.
You started Game 7.
I did.
And it's 30 years ago this year, by the way. That's you coincided the book with that. And you were riding, I think, 14 consecutive scoreless innings coming into that game as a pitcher. And in this third inning, I believe third inning, top of the second, back-to-back home runs.
Yeah.
And you were taken out after 3+ innings. You had given up 3 runs, but the Mets came back and won. You celebrated, but you talk about how after the celebration, you just felt that you didn't do your part.
Well, you know what happened? I just had this crash and burn that I'm sure happens to a lot of athletes. I was so joyful when we won because Sid Fernandez picked me up. I always kid that they had the wrong Hawaiian pitching that day. Sid Fernandez picked me up, the team picked me up, and the Mets won a World Series. But I remember after the parade was done, 48 hours later, I'm in my apartment, and I kind of crashed and burned. I'm like, what happened? Because when you're a young athlete, what do you want? You can't wait to make the putt to win the Masters or make the foul shot that wins the NBA title or pitch in Game 7. And when you're a young athlete, everything comes your way. You're the best athlete in your town. You always get the job done. And what you forget about in the World Series atmosphere, someone has got to not get the job done. It was me that night.
Yeah, but now I would assume 30 years later, or you tell me how long it took for you to understand, hey, I had 14 scoreless innings coming in. I contributed the whole year. I helped get us to Game 7. Just because I didn't do so well, we won anyway. When did that set in?
That didn't really set in until I started writing this book, and that's the reason I wrote it.
That long?
Yeah, because I think that's the reason I wrote the book.
You should have called me. I could have told you.
Exactly. Or I should have seen someone for $150 an hour, and that might have been easier. But it was cathartic in the sense that I know what you're saying, and it all makes sense. So I thought organically, because of all those things you listed, it would just dissipate at some point, and it never did. And so that's why I wrote the book. I wanted to kind of weave my way through what I used to be, an athlete, and what I am now, an analyst, and try to look at me 30 years ago, and where did I come up short, and why did I come up short? And if you read this book, you'll come up with some of the answers that I came up with, and now I can rest and bury 30 years ago.
So if you're a baseball fan, or if you're not if you're a baseball fan, you're going to eat this book up. If you're a Mets fan, you're going to devour it. And if you're not a baseball fan, this is a life lesson. This is something we could all learn from: success and failure and how to deal with it.
Yeah, I think that one of the great things that I find very ironic is that this failure and others in pro ball, as we all have, or professional athletics, has really bounced past me into what I do now. Because I'm able to talk about not only some of the great successes that happen for the team and maybe myself personally, but I also know what it feels like to be on your knees and feeling as though you can't get that last out, and I can talk about that also.
You're a smart guy. You know, your Yale pedigree and all that. Politics, I'm sure you follow politics.
I do.
What's your take on what's going on right now, presidentially speaking?
I've never seen anything like it in my lifetime. I know I'm only 55 years old. I've never seen anything like it. It's the most remarkable run where everyone, or the people that are voting, are trying to negate the politician. They're trying to say, we're not voting for anyone who's been doing the same old thing over and over. So that's why maybe Bernie is getting votes and Donald Trump are getting votes. And to me, it's just remarkable that the people are trying to change the system, kill the system because they're sick of the system, and what we end up with is probably less than we deserve.
Really? So you're not a fan of Trump?
I'm not a fan. No, I'm not a fan. I think he's a remarkable businessman. I know and have met his family, and they're amazing people. I just wouldn't vote for him for
president. Would you vote for Bernie?
I would vote for Bernie.
Would you vote for Hillary?
I feel the burn.
You feel the burn? Okay.
I do feel.
Why more so than Hillary, if that is the case?
I think because he is unique. I think that, I don't know if there's things he can do can be implemented, but where he got me is when Hillary was asked, would you deport children? She couldn't come up with an answer. They asked Bernie the same question. Of course not.
So great to see you, folks. The book is Game 7, 1986. Ron Darling, get it. We're coming back with Malzberg's Media Madness.